Hi, Mr. Gawreluk here, and I'm going to talk to you about the water cycle. You know, water covers over 70% of the earth, and it's really one of the basic, if not the most basic ingredient for life. It's very important that we learn about that because when you have something that covers over 70% of the surface of the planet you live on, you probably want to start taking really good care of it. Now, in the water cycle, we know that um, water cycle begins with evaporation. And when you start talking about evaporation, you start talking about the oceans that are covering this vast planet that allow for storm systems to develop, Pacific and Atlantic and Indian and Arctic oceans, and other bodies of water as well. You can be in different places like Duluth, Minnesota, or Baudette, Minnesota, or you can be in different areas where there's large lakes, maybe near Mille Lacs, and someone can say, wow, it looks like there's a storm that's literally forming over the lake and coming our way. We better get out of here because it could be lightning. You know, that happens and it can happen fast. So it's important to learn about the water cycle and how that develops. And like I said, it starts with evaporation. As the water evaporates, it becomes water vapor, something that you can't see. It goes up, up, up into the atmosphere and it gets very cold. And those cold little pieces that used to be kind of a gaseous form of water, combine with dust and other water droplets around them, and eventually form clouds. And it looks like it could be fog, but it's up in the sky and it's white and poofy or gray and poofy, and we call it a cloud. So that's pretty amazing, don't you think? And for all you little geniuses out there, yes, ice can help form clouds from the polar caps of the North and South Pole. And they can help form clouds because they'll skip a step. That ice won't turn to water and then form. It'll allow the sublimation means that ice can turn into vapor and form clouds right over the poles. We all know that there's different kinds of precipitation out there, and we've experienced them all. If you've lived in Minnesota, you've experienced everything. The one thing we haven't experienced, and I hope we never do, is a hurricane. But it is 2020, so you never know, right? But anyway, we've had all sorts of different kinds of precipitation out there that allow us to enjoy this great state we call Minnesota. So it's rained. Now what? You have all sorts of puddles around different places, but then it seems as though in other spots it rained, but you can't see the water. And where did it go? Well, there's this big competition that's going after all those little individual water droplets. Trees and grass and flowers and shrubs, all these things, animals, you and me, we're all fighting for, well, I don't know if fighting's the right word, but it could technically be thought of as a fight for water. Different kinds of plants need different amounts of water. Some need a whole lot more than others. And so with that, it becomes, kind of a what happened to the water moment. Some of the water will run off and go into rivers, lakes, and streams. And they help recharge our rivers and lakes and streams, or ponds, or bogs. And then some water will actually escape and make it through the tree line, make it through the grass, and get through the dirt and get down into those underground water areas that we put our city water over. We call them water towers. This is a very complicated looking chart, but we'll try to break it down a little bit for you. You can see that the sun, which is the driver of all of this, the sun is in charge of everything, starting up that evaporation piece to the cycle. The sun, which helps create the clouds, brings the water vapor up, creates the clouds, and then the clouds have those pieces of water vapor that are too heavy, start dropping the water onto the planet, onto Earth, and you get this major storm or minor storm, but you get a rain that ends up running off. Some goes into the trees and the shrubs and the plants, but other parts of the water end up in the ground, way down into the ground. They have a long trip through the soil. And we, as you can see in the middle, it says water table, and then it looks like there's two straight kind of pipes going up. Those are wells. And so you can see that if you can get under the ground into that area where there's different cavities and aquifer systems, you're able to pull up water, and that's pure water now. That's gone through the soil, that's gone through everything and purified, because the dirt and the soil actually clean and purify that water as it drips down into those aquifer systems. And then we pull that up. And all of that, of course, is powered by the sun. There's a lot we can learn about water. And I don't know if you knew this, but there's the same amount of water right now on the earth as there was when the earth was formed. We haven't lost water, we haven't gained water. So I guess you could say, like on the space station, they have a saying, today's coffee is tomorrow's coffee. And which is kind of gross to think about, but we have the same amount of water and it's not going anywhere, which makes you wonder, how often has this water been used already? And by whom? By her? By him? By your teacher? Who's been using this water already? I don't know if that's something you necessarily want to think of, but I think the purification system might be something you want to check out. Water has two elements, hydrogen and oxygen. There's 2 parts hydrogen to the 1 part of oxygen. Nearly 97% of the world's water is salty. I think we've talked about that in other videos. Another 2% of that is locked up in ice in the polar caps, which is where that sublimation part is so important to know that clouds can be formed over the ice. Clouds can be formed over the ice. I don't know if you knew this. The average total home water usage per person per day in the United States is 50 gallons of water per person. 50 gallons of water per person. Think of all the things you use water for. Cooking, showering, cleaning things, bathrooming, drinking, and on average, every single one of you uses about 50 gallons of water. Now, of course, that's an average. Some of you probably use more. We don't know. And the cost of that, in case you were wondering, the cost of water supplied to a home in the United States is about $2 per 1,000 gallons. In other words, 5 gallons, like a 5-gallon bucket or pail, costs you about a penny. So if you use 50 gallons of water a day, you do the math. If 5 gallons is a penny, that means 50 gallons would be 10 pennies. So you can tell your parents, and of course, do this please in a respectful way. If you're taking too long in the shower and they're like, hey, we're going to lose all this money, it's costing us a lot of money, take it easy. You can say, okay, a penny's difference maybe? 2 pennies? I'll pay it. But be respectful. I don't want you to be grounded because of what I'm telling you here. All right. And then, of course, you have to remember that, none of the water has changed on Earth. But when I did talk about the space station earlier, there's people living on the space station right now, and they're up there orbiting the planet. There isn't any added water that goes up there right now. They have the same water that they've had for months. Now, how do they purify that water is the question. And if you have an idea, I'd be interested to hear that in your comments or in the comments or anything you have to say to this. Folks, the water cycle is important. Water is always circulating on the planet. It's powered by the sun. And we go through a cloud formation process through evaporation. And then it rains. And that water has to go somewhere. Generally, it goes to the lowest spot. And when it's done going to the lowest spot, it either pools up and collects, or it seeps down into groundwater areas where we pull it back up and use it. Or if it sits in a lake or river or flows into the ocean, it starts that cycle again of evaporation, cloud formation, rain, runoff, collection and pooling, and back up again. And it's happened for millions of years on this planet. Well, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the little presentation here. And if you have any questions, of course, you know that you can talk to your teachers and they'll help you out with things. Have a great day.